My name is Jonathan Gilliam, and this is The Experts. And it is Thursday. You're going to be listening to this show on Thursday, and this is Jonathan Gilliam, and the truth has arrived, and I want to just talk to you a little bit. I told you yesterday I was going to talk about this billionaire that has given away all his money and is now, his goal in life that he always said was to give away all his money and die broke. Well, he's now broke. But I'm going to save that, and I'm going to push that back a little bit because there's something else I think that is that's really jumping out at me today. I've been, hearing all these reports about Bill Barr, and there's, of course, especially after yesterday's show talking, if you haven't had a chance to listen to that, listen to it. But there's so much stuff going on in this country. We all know about it. I've been all over the country talking to people in so many states. I've been in New York, in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, out to Illinois. I've been down to Arkansas, and all the way through now to Arizona, where I've been talking to different people, and it's the same everywhere you go. I don't want to rehash yesterday's show completely, but it is the same everywhere you go. And I've had people reach out to me after yesterday's show talking about the reality of how scary things are right now, and how, especially after, Dan Bongino talked about this, and they've talked about it on Fox News, and about how, there's the left is saying that they want to overthrow, or they're going to. I can't remember how Dan Bongino said that it was being said, but they are basically going to try to start the fight, depending on what happens on November 3rd. I think they're going to start the fight before that, personally, and really they already have. But I think it's going to increase. And I said, back in June or July, that August was going to be the time when the violence started to amp up. And it did. It started to amp up in August. Towards the end of August, it got even worse. It seems like it's died down now, but it hasn't. What's happening now is that we've become, like we always do when you watch the news, complacent. It used to be, remember back before 9/11, there was that movie Faces of Death. And I remember as a teenager hearing about this movie, and when I first saw it, it was kind of shocking to me. It was a very unpleasant feeling. It was like hearing one of your parents cry for the first time, or if your parents ever fought, hearing that, it's just strange. And that's what it was like. And I didn't like it at all. I didn't like watching it. I remember it was one of those things that you just do as a kid. There's something weird comes out and you watch it. And if you don't know what Faces of Death was, it was a video of different people dying in different ways. And it was pretty big back then, and it was being passed around, there was no internet back then. In 80, I graduated in high school in 87, so there was no internet back then. But you could see it, and I don't remember how I saw it, but do you remember after 9/11, all these people were being beheaded? It was almost inevitable that you were going to see one of those videos. And then after social media became more prevalent, those things came out even more. Even Fox News, I remember the big debate several years ago was that Fox News had chosen to show the video of a Jordanian pilot who was shot down over Syria and captured by ISIS, and he was burned alive. And they decided and made the judgment call to play that video on foxnews.com, where you could download it and see it. And, it affected people. People watched it. A lot of people watched it. But you notice that you get over those things real quick now, and you just move on. Sometimes it takes a while for those things to get out of your head, and hopefully most of you have not watched those, but a lot of people have. And they're disgusting, and it's terrible to watch somebody die. Terrible. But the whole point of me talking about this is that we've gotten to a point now where we're kind of desensitized with that. And there's a report on, again, remember, I go to Drudge, I go to foxnews.com, I go to all these different places and online publications to look at the headlines and look past those. So when I say it's on Drudge, it's actually on another publication, but there's one of the headlines on Drudge Report, which is far left, but it's a great place to see how the left is spinning stuff. And it was talking about how the Mexican cartel burnt the face off of one of the leaders of the rival cartels while he was begging for them to kill him. See, those are the headlines that back in the day those headlines wouldn't appear. It just would have said, cartel leader murdered by a rival cartel. But now it's sensationalism. They say it, and we're kind of dull to that. So when I say we, when you all hear that there is people in the United States and groups of people trying to overthrow the government, or they are trying to undermine the next election, and they're making it perfectly clear that that's what they're going to do, then it after a while, it just kind of gets old. Most people don't even, they say, yeah, I know that's happening, but it doesn't shock them when they actually see it. They just get kind of angry. I call it couch angry, where they're angry on the couch, and they don't get up and actually partake in conversation to discuss, what's going on, how do we stop it? Because most people don't even realize that they are a part of the solution. They really are. They're not just bystanders. The Founding Fathers didn't intend for that to happen. You are supposed to be a part of not only the solution, but a part of the overwatch of what's happening, and either insisting that your representatives and do something about it. And as Thomas Jefferson once said, refresh the tree of liberty from time to time. As I read through these different aspects of the law about insurrection and about treason, I reflect back on, I talk a lot about Louis Gohmert, because, and if you don't know who Louis Gohmert is, look him up. He's a representative from Congress, or from Texas. Just an amazing leader and a well thought out individual. He's been a judge. He's a veteran congressman. He's just a great guy. And I remember him telling me one time when I this was years ago, talking to him after the Sean Hannity radio show, and I said, Louis, it feels like we're in a civil war. We're heading to a civil war. And see, here's what he corrected me on, is that everybody always thinks of a civil war as an armed conflict. But he said, Jonathan, we're already in a civil war. I go to a civil war every day when I go to work. And it was a profound statement for me, because I realized, that my feelings were right. It was a validation of what I was seeing. And I asked him, I said, why isn't communism and socialism and other forms of government outlawed in the United States? Why don't we make laws to outlaw those other types of forms of government? Because we already have a form of government called the Constitution. And it blew my mind when he said, those laws already exist. We just have to utilize those laws. And so today, as I was going over I have this issue with Bill Barr, because as I've explained before, Bill Barr to me is one of these orbiting satellites of Washington, D.C. He goes in and out of the DOJ, and just like Christopher Wray, just like Mueller, just like Comey, all of them have gone in and out of the DOJ, and in some aspect, and those other guys ended up as the directors of the FBI. But when we look at Barr, he has been in and around Washington, D.C. for a long, long time. And as I've explained before, there's two types of deep state people. There's the deep state that is really a leftist. I say leftist. There is a leftist aspect to part of the deep state, but don't think that the Republican establishment doesn't have their deep state as well. I mean, that's where all these anti-Trumpers come from. You have to remember, the Republican Democrat parties are private companies. They're not government entities. And although I do say, and have said before, and I will say again and again, the only hope of this nation, as far as politics go, is for the people, the conservative people, to take back the Republican Party from this establishment. But their establishment, as we saw when President Trump came into office, and after 7 years of the Republicans complaining about Obamacare, they had nothing to offer. When President Trump came into office, they didn't offer him and say, Mr. President, here is our plan to get rid of Obamacare, and this is what we feel like would be better for the American people. They didn't do that. That's the Republican establishment. not the people, not a lot of the other politicians that I see, when I come and meet them from the local level on the ground. Not Louis Gohmert, and there's a couple other people in Washington, D.C. I don't look at them as the establishment or the deep state, but the Republican Party does have a deep state. Those people that have been there forever. John McCain was one of them. Lindsey Graham is one of them. And when we look at the Democrat Party and their deep state, what's so profound about that is that they really are in control of these federal agencies. The Republican deep state is not, but they actually, as you've seen, especially when it comes to the president's fake dossier that they tried to use against him and all this spying, the Republican deep state was involved in that as well. John McCain was right in there with it. Lindsey Graham is a person who got the interview set up for President Trump with Bernstein. This whole nonsense about the president downplaying coronavirus. So the deep state exists in all of government, and its people. The reality is, when you just take it at its bottom line, this is where even the left media and the right media try to protect their assets. But the deep state is more than just the left. It also contains nefarious individuals from the Republican Party and individuals where I put Barr into this category, and Durham, and a lot of these executives that end up serving in the DOD. These are people who will not rock the boat. They may not be ideologically pushed to the left, and they may not even agree or take part in what the establishment of the right or the swamp of the Republican Party, whatever you want to call it, he may not partake in what they say and do. But the fact is, he doesn't do what he should be doing if he was really out there for blood when it comes to enforcing the laws that will keep communism and socialism from ever getting into this country. Bernie Sanders should be in jail. All these protesters should be in jail for what they've done. And I'm going to explain a little bit of that as we go along. But the part about Barr that really bothers me is that he is a deep stater. Now, you can identify him as, like I just said, different from the leftist, the communists, the socialists who want literally to overthrow the government. I don't think Bill Barr, I don't know, who knows, but I don't think Bill Barr, from looking at him from my investigative training and experience, I'm not looking at somebody who's trying to overthrow the government, but I'm definitely looking at somebody who has allowed a lot of stuff to happen and not done anything about it. So I hope that helps you understand where I'm coming from with this. I know a lot of people celebrate Attorney General Barr. I don't know why anybody would celebrate anybody in Washington, D.C. Except, and I know this sounds like a biased statement, except for President Trump. I mean, the guy has only been there for 4 years. That's it. All this stuff that you see taking place has nothing to do with him. It's not because of something he said or did on social media. You people that think that his Twitter is responsible for this stuff need to get your head out of your ass, because it's absolutely not true. The downfall of this country, I've been talking about it. I mean, I saw it when I got out of the FBI. It took me about 6 months before it started really hitting home that they weren't, and this is what cued me in on it. You know, I'd been a part of the global war on terrorism, not only as a SEAL, but actually as an FBI agent, as an air marshal, as a contractor. And when I took a step back after I got out, and I looked back and I was like, we're really not doing anything to stop the global war on terror. They'd never named the enemy. They hadn't even named who the enemy was. That was one of the first things on Fox News that I ended up talking about over and over, was the fact that the caliphate was something that ISIS and Al-Qaeda had been preaching and had never been mentioned on television. I would say, next to myself and one or two other people on Fox News, nobody had mentioned the caliphate. No one. I was the first one on television to really start talking about that. And I'm reflecting on it as I talk about it now. And it used to like really shock my brain, where I was like, I think it was because I had just gotten out of official service. I saw this, I analyzed it, and I said, that's what it is. That's what they say it is. Why would, if ISIS and Al-Qaeda are telling you it's the caliphate, why wouldn't the rest of the media report that? And it was kind of confounding to me. I just couldn't wrap my head around it. And then, as I got into radio and I started really diving into, this is where I started looking at how I look at media, how I look at the headlines. I started diving into it. The one thing I started seeing back in 2013, 2014 was that communism, little flurries of communism were popping up here and there. People like Jane Fonda all of a sudden resurfaced out of nowhere. She became, you started hearing her voice again. You started seeing movements by the Democrat Party to really work in a subversive way. Listening to Yuri Bezmenov was one of the biggest eye-opening experiences I had after I got out of the Bureau. And that guy died in the 80s. No, he actually came here in the 80s. He died in the 90s, I think is what it is. So he came from USSR. He was head of propaganda for the KGB in India. And then he defected to the United States. And listening to him predict everything that's happening right now, it was very profound to me. And so when I'm listening to him and he talks about subversion, I never heard anything about subversion when I was in federal law enforcement. Nothing. And we're the ones who are supposed to be policing against that. And I didn't hear anything about it. So now, this many years after, and having really had my eyes open to the reality of what's going on. And now you all are probably in the same boat as I am seeing this, but I've been screaming this stuff on the radio since 2014, 2015. When I started to see it wasn't just the war on terror and saying that it was fundamental Islam or that the caliphate existed. It was the war on drugs. I remember years ago when I was in the SEAL teams, when I was training as an advisor, training people down in Central South America, I remember we kept asking ourselves, what are we doing here? This is doing nothing. We're not stopping the influx of drugs. We used to think about, we would talk about, this is all the way back in 1999. We were talking about how nobody was doing anything about immigration. Drugs could come across the border all they wanted because there was no immigration process that was worth anything. This is long before I got into the FBI. We actually dealt with drug cases that went back to the border of Mexico and Canada. And it was like I'd had epiphany way back then, and we saw it because we thought tactically that they weren't doing anything about it. I remember going down to Mexico in, I think it was 2002, 2001, and we were doing Spanish training in Cuernavaca, Mexico. There was a Spanish school there, and they sent us down there to learn some stuff. And didn't really work out well because everybody down there was wanting to speak English, so it didn't work out quite well. But I went back down there several years ago on a protection detail as a civilian after I got out of the FBI, and with a business person that was going down there for business, and it was destroyed down there. And when I mean destroyed, it wasn't like here. It's not like things were burning down. It was so dangerous. You couldn't go anywhere. Heaven forbid that ever happens in the United States. I mean, literally, you just felt the entire time that you were down there that you were being watched and you potentially would be in a disaster situation at any time. The locals that lived down there before, they won't even talk to you because they're afraid of the cartel, that they're going to try and flip them or they're going to try and come after them because they didn't tell them about you. So everything's changed down there. And we saw this way back then. But why? Because none of the executives in the government do anything about this. And it was profound to me. I couldn't think of it. I couldn't figure this out. And then when communism started to spread, and I saw this in 2014, 2015, started talking about it on the radio, did several shows where I filled in for Sean Hannity, several shows talking about nothing but communism and having different people come and talk about the creep of communism and how it's coming. This was long before the media ever brought it up. And now you turn on the television. Yes, this does infuriate me. It makes me angry because, and see, this is why you look towards people with experience. This is where I'm not tooting my horn. I'm not bragging. I have experience in a certain field. I knew something was wrong when I got out of official service in 2013. I knew something was up with all these different things, as I just explained. But as we progressed forward in the years from 2013, this new thing started to pop up. And as I started to talk about it, some of the groups of people that I talked to were Vietnam vets. And they had dealt, and I used to really criticize the Vietnam War, not the vets, but the fact that we went to war in Vietnam and we didn't win the war. All that loss of life, and it just stopped. Same thing with the global war on terror. But the interesting thing about this is communism, just like the Korean War, the first war after World War II, where we're still, because nobody has ever finished what we started, which was where we, in World War II, we eliminated an enemy. We don't do that anymore because the Department of War went to the Department of Defense. That's such a liberal thing. The Secretary of War to Secretary of Defense, so liberal. And since then, 1947, we've never won a war since. In Vietnam, let's go back before Vietnam. In the Korean War, we were fighting the same family that's in charge, and ruling over communist North Korea now. And we just stopped because it was a political war instead of a war to eliminate the enemy. And then you have the Vietnam War, fighting communism again. I don't know if people realize that. We're fighting it again. And then you had the Cold War, all about communism. And for some strange reason, when the Berlin Wall fell and when Russia, quote unquote, crumbled, they didn't really crumble, as we can see, everybody thought that communism was gone. I mean, they forgot that China was still there. It's communist. That North Korea is communist. Cuba's communist. It's 90 miles off the south coast of Florida. But people just started thinking, communism's it's not really, it's nothing. Terrorism is now the biggest issue. And while everybody was focused on terrorism, which is another issue that we never fought to win, communism spread. Now, it's been spreading. It's been spreading according to Yuri Bezmenov and many others. Saul Alinsky, who was a communist. David Horowitz, who I've listened to, who used to be a communist, says he's conservative now, even though his son seems to be a leftist. I'm not going to get into that. But communism has been spreading since the 50s, probably even before that. But while everybody's focused on this growth of terrorism now, this is leading up until 4 years ago, that was the main thing all during the Obama administration. Terrorism, ISIS, war in Afghanistan, war in Iraq, focus. That was all you saw on television. Everybody's focused on that. Meanwhile, the war on drugs went away, didn't really do anything. The way they changed a lot of stuff in law enforcement didn't really. Thank you, President Bush, for that after 9/11. Solid focus on this, pumping up how dangerous terrorism is and Islam, and it is dangerous, don't get me wrong. But while that was occurring and everybody was looking over there, communism and socialism started to grow in the United States. And no one paid attention to that. Why? Because the reality is the deep state, the leftist, the deep state from the left are all entrenched in this. It's their goal to get rid of the Constitution and reformulate it. And if you don't believe that, all you got to do is look at what they're preaching. Look at what they're saying now. They actually don't even hide it. And also, the deep state on the right was doing nothing. They just sit back and let it happen. And they've, like when Hillary Clinton and the Benghazi thing, they have, Trey Gowdy and all, and they have these, they convene these hearings and nothing happens. Nothing happened. They all said they were going to do this or going to do that, or we're going to get to the bottom of it. They've never gotten to the bottom of that. Never gotten to the bottom of it. Nobody was arrested after listening to what the Clintons did. Nobody's been arrested at all through any of this stuff. Even with the Russian scandal, where it was blatantly clear the left, the swamp on the left and the swamp on the right, actually tried to overthrow our election and overthrow a duly elected president. Nothing has come from that. Nothing. It's not like anything great has happened. There's been no major arrest. There is no major plan. So when I look at what Bill Barr, what everybody thinks Bill Barr is going to do, what everybody thinks is going to potentially happen. I don't know if everybody that's all saying that there's this great plan, this master plan. I don't know if people realize that when Bill Barr or Durham says there's, some indictments are coming down, something's going to happen in the next week. Well, that means you have 30 days to make a big difference before the election. And if you think if Joe Biden, if they somehow through their trickery and all the things that they do to get Biden elected and it works and he gets elected, if you think that the Attorney General or Durham or anybody else is going to go forward on any of this stuff, you got to get your head out of the sand, because it's just not true. They're not going to do anything. Even if this president gets reelected, please, Lord, let him get reelected. What you're going to see is more of the same, of these people dragging their feet. I've told this story before on here about an individual that I rag on the senior executive service a lot. That's a whole branch of the government, these senior executives in government. The reason they call them senior executive service is they go through a school and they end up getting extra pay, because the top pay of an agent or somebody that works for agency under the Civil Service Act it can't be any more than a junior congressman, I believe. It's either congressman or senator, but I think it's congressman. Okay. They can't make any more than them. And so they came up with senior executive service, where they're kind of read out of that program and they're now put into another program where they can make more. And the reason they say that they need to be able to make more is because they don't want to lose good. This is the excuse they give. We have senior executive service. We pay so that we can pay these people more, because we don't want talented people at the top of agencies going to the private sector. That's what they say. That's what they say, which is the biggest bunch of crap I've ever heard in my life, because no one that I know gets into federal service so they can make the big bucks. Okay, you do it because of service. And if you're not willing to do it because of service and take a nice pension at the end of your service and accept the fact that you didn't get super rich, but you did a really good job of serving this country, then you shouldn't be in those jobs. So they created this senior executive service, which by and large is where they pump all the, where people scratch, the deep state's back so they can get in this position. And then the deep state takes care of them when they get out. And so I was on one of the radio shows just crushing the senior executive service, because that's who all these people are. McCabe and Comey and even Hillary Clinton. All these individuals at the higher echelon of government are senior executive service members. And they even have their own flag, which is weird, but so I'm really going off on these people, because that's where all these problems exist, by and large. And somebody reached out to me that was a senior executive service member of the government, and they told me that not everybody was like that, but they understood what I was saying, but not everybody. And they wanted me to know this story, and I've told this before, where this individual worked for the Department of Homeland Security, and I believe it was President Bush had set out with it, because that's right when Homeland Security started. And they put out policies. They wanted certain thing to happen. But one of the higher ups, the senior executive service members in the DHS, did not agree with that policy that was being set forth. So they agreed to implement it, but then they just sat on it. And they waited until he was out of office, and then it just went away. They never did what this policy intended them to do. And that's the way that these senior executive members work. And that's why you see like Bill Barr and Durham and these people, why nothing gets done. Because that's what they do. They don't, if it looks like it's going to rock the boat, they just don't do it. And if they disagree with it, like McCabe or Peter Strzok. I don't know if Peter Strzok and Lisa Page were senior executive members. They're up there. They were definitely up there. They just don't do what they should do because they disagree with it, or they'll try to actually go out and go against the policy because they have the power. There's no overwatch, and they're not going to get in trouble. I mean, look, if you did something wrong to the extent of what Hillary Clinton did, or any of these other idiots, they wouldn't do a report by the inspector general to see if your you've actually done something wrong, they would start an investigation on you. And as they collect information, working with the United States Attorney's Office, they would build a case. And as the evidence came in, the case would expand and their investigative powers would expand. You would never know that they were investigating you until they determined it was time to arrest you and try to flip you to get others, or to take it to court or get you to plead. What they do with these executives makes no sense whatsoever from a legal standpoint. None. But who's doing that? Who's coming up with that? Well, these senior executive service members. Who do you think the inspector general is? He's a senior executive service member, political appointee. So when I look at this one report here, it says Barr issues blistering report critiquing his own Justice Department. I'm looking at that, and it's talking about how he delivered a quote-unquote scathing critique of his own Justice Department Wednesday night, insisting that his absolute authority to overrule career staff, which frightens me that there's career staff in the DOJ, whom he said too often inject themselves into politics and went headhunting for high-profile targets. Now, that is absolutely true. That is true in a lot of ways. If you try to call the FBI, remember, the FBI and the DOJ work hand in hand. The FBI is the investigators, but they work with the DOJ. And if you go to them and you say, I have this case, and it's actually a federal case, but it's really not going to bring them any notoriety, or if they just think that the DOJ probably won't take it, they won't even look at it. Same thing with prosecutors at the state level, or at the city level or county level. They won't even look at certain cases because it doesn't bring them any glory. He goes on to talk about how many of the people in the Justice Department do things because of basically glory or careerism. He also says that they were talking about how he's interfering with things. He said, what exactly am I interfering with? He asked. Under the law, all prosecutorial power is invested in the Attorney General. Now, let's take that statement alone, what he just said, that all prosecutorial power is invested in him, the Attorney General. Well, then you got to look at these things that are being reported but have not happened, and we're now 40 days or 40-something days before the election. For instance, one of the headlines from the Wall Street Journal, Barr tells prosecutors to consider charging violent protesters with sedition. Hasn't happened. Hasn't happened to my knowledge. There's another report just like that I'm looking at from FoxNews.com. Explosive report, the headline says. Barr asked prosecutors to explore charges for Durkin over CHOP. That's the location in Seattle, and that Durkin is the mayor of Seattle. And he's talking about how CHOP was that autonomous zone in Seattle that they had up for a couple of weeks, and 2 people were killed. That was a Capitol Hill organized protest, CHOP, the police-free zone. He was inquiring by this same staff that he was just critiquing about bringing charges against the mayor of Seattle. Well, that never happened. These reports are saying that, well, in this one on Fox News, it says that the U.S. attorney denies that Barr asked prosecutors to consider criminal charges against Durkin. Now, that story can be taken 2 ways, right? Did he ask for them to look into it and then they denied it? Or did he not ask him? Either way, it's bad because it shows that the Department of Justice is not looking at these things, this insurrection, this attempt to overthrow the government. So I went and looked at what the legal code for this is in the United States. 18 U.S. Code, Chapter 115, Treason, Sedition, and Subversive Activities. Right? This is what Louis Gohmert had been telling me about. Remember, I said that he told me there were laws already on the books. This is what Louis Gohmert was telling me about. Now, I didn't even realize that this is what he was talking about until I looked this stuff up today. He had mentioned it, but I wasn't really clear on what he was saying. But now here we are, several years after he and I had been discussing this stuff, and it is clear to me, as he said then, that there are laws on the books that prevent all of this stuff from happening. But as he said then, and as I just pointed out about Barr and the DOJ, the laws have to be enforced. They have to be enforced. It doesn't matter if what the Wall Street Journal is reporting, Barr tells prosecutors to consider charging violent protesters with sedition. If you don't do it, why is he coming out and telling the story about how he talked to prosecutors? Why is FoxNews.com reporting that which he denies evidently, but that he had approached advisors at the Department of Justice to go after the mayor of Seattle, and they didn't do it? It's clear that they are guilty when I read this chapter and these different acts against the government, and I'm going to describe these to you. It is clear that there's all the legal room in the world to go after these people. So now you got to start asking yourself, why is this not occurred? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a break, and I'm going to come back, and I'm going to read to you about treason, misprision of treason, rebellion and insurrection, sedition conspiracy. That word conspiracy is very important. Advocating the overthrow of the government. There's other ones here, but I'm picking out the best ones. Activities affecting armed forces during war. A recruiting of a service against the United States. Those are just a few. I'm going to read those to you, but let's take a break real quick, and I'm going to come back. And again, these are the laws that Louis Gohmert was talking about that are already on the books. We'll be right back. Hey, this is Jonathan Gilliam, and now I've been telling you, as all during the show, we're talking about what is happening in this country and how it's affecting you. Now, as things change and things get more violent, it's important for you to realize that you can actually predict where this violence is going to happen. You can actually prepare yourself, because this isn't rocket science, folks. It's all predictable. What you have to do is look at yourself from the attacker's point of view. You have to understand how attackers will look at you, who would attack you, why they would attack, how it would be carried out, where it would be carried out, and when. All of that can be predicted by your own understanding of your life, your business, your school, your city. You already know that information. It's an attacker's job to get it and use it against you. So in Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival, that's my best-selling book, I discuss all of that, and I show you how to look at yourself from the attacker's point of view. Now, it's got two workbooks that go with it, the Threat Assessment Workbook and the Defense Assessment Workbook. They go right along with the book. After you get through with it, you will understand how to do this threat assessment on yourself, and then how to take that information and put it over into the defense assessment to build your defenses, plans of action, and mitigation of vulnerabilities. Now, for the kids, The Adventures of Team Little Bigs, a parent's book for children. It's a book of pictures that have safety, awareness, and communication lessons built into the pictures. And then the parents go to teamlittlebigs.com, get the lesson plans. Team Little Bigs, it's an amazing book. Sheep No More, it's an incredible book. Go get them all. They're available wherever books are sold. And let's get back to the show. All right. Hope you guys like my live reads. Hey, I try to spice it up a little bit with a little bit of music. But so I want to get back now to what I was talking about there just a second ago. And that is 18 U.S. Code, Chapter 115. Remember, treason, sedition, and subversive activities. It's right here. Everything that Yuri Bezmenov was talking about that we should guard against, these are the laws that should have been used all this time to go after anyone that is plotting against the United States. And it's what Louis Gohmert had talked about, that these laws are already in the books. Now, this is going to blow your mind, folks, if you don't realize this. And I know there's a lot of people out there. I'm really impressed. When I used to be hosting a lot more than I am now on the radio, I actually enjoy doing this much more because there's no restraint here. I can say what I feel. I don't have to worry about sponsors or what whoever I'm being employed by says that I can or can't say, right? This is truth and it's raw. When I read through these things, what I was saying there is that so many people would call in on these shows, and I'm so impressed by the knowledge that people have. I mean, it far surpasses my own knowledge in a lot of ways, and I've learned so much through the years on what's going on by listening to the callers. Now, you get your crazies, but a lot of you out there know a lot, and it's very impressive on what you know about history and the law. So when I read these, it should blow your mind, because you're going to say, why aren't we actually using these laws that are on the books to stop the movement of communism, socialism, these rioters, these mayors and governors who are literally oppressing the people by enforcing their own type of martial law using COVID? So let's look at the big one, the one everybody always talks about, treason. This is the federal government's definition of treason. Whoever owing allegiance to the United States levies war against them or adheres to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort within the United States or elsewhere, is guilty of treason and shall suffer death, or shall be in prison not less than 5 years, and fined under this title not less than $10,000, and shall be incapable of holding any office under the United States. Now, that is very important, because all of these mayors, governors, congressmen, senators, judges, people who have sat idly by knowing what has happened and allowed it to happen. All of these senior executive service members who went out of their way to try and prevent any prosecution of these people who are destroying this country and wanting to usher in a new form of government. They're all guilty of this. Now, some people argue that treason is only viable if we're in war. I mean, listen, this is what I say to that. Okay, we're in war. We're in war with a domestic enemy, although it's not just domestic. The aid and support is being given to these people by foreign entities. It's not just George Soros. There's other entities out there. People love to talk about George Soros. I think he's a dangerous, deadly, weird human being. But I do believe there's many more at his level. I learned this a long time ago when I was in the FBI, that when you think that you see the obvious person that's financing something or that's behind it as far as authority goes in a criminal enterprise, chances are there's people far greater and far higher in authority than those people. So let's go back over that real quick. Whoever owing allegiance to the United States levies war against them or adheres to their enemies. So if you are a citizen of the United States and you are in allegiance with the United States, you've sworn allegiance, or you're born here and you've never gotten rid of your citizenship and moved, and you levy war against the United States and adhere to the enemies, giving them aid and comfort within the United States or elsewhere. Remember, giving them aid and comfort. Now, I don't know exactly how they would define aid and comfort, but I think when a mayor, like in Portland, goes out of their way, or in Seattle, to prevent law enforcement from going in and arresting these people and making sure that they have the ability to come out and do what they do, which is burn things down, tear things up, and kill people, that is giving aid and comfort to the enemies of the United States within the United States. So that's treason. That's the big one. That's the big one. And I say big one because you can get the death penalty for that. Misprision of treason. I don't know exactly how that, because I'm not an attorney, but whoever owing allegiance to the United States and having knowledge of the commission of any treason against them. This is the big one right here, okay? Well, I said the last one was big, but this is big when it comes to government employees or people like, for instance, Antifa, or somebody that's a parent that knows about Antifa, or people who knowingly look the other way. Remember and I'm not saying looking the other way is treason, but remember this. I told you about this, the experiment by Dr. Stanley Milgram in 1969, where he took actors and he put them in another room And then he put out an ad in the school paper saying that for extra credit and things that they needed people to come in and volunteer for an experiment. He would take those volunteers, he would sit them down in front of this big board of knobs and switches, and he would tell them, okay, I'm going to ask this person, individual in the other room, a question. Now, the person working the switchboard that was a real volunteer did not know that the person in the other room was an actor. And he was saying, I'm going to ask this person over there a series of questions. Whenever they get a question wrong, you're to initiate a shock by flipping this switch. And then every question they get after that wrong, you turn the dial up and you shock them again. And over 50% of the people would take this all the way to the point where the other person died, which means they are actively engaging in something that they knew was wrong, because in many cases they would defecate themselves, urinate, pass out, but they kept doing it because they were being pressured by Dr. Milgram. And so you kind of get that. That's that group mentality where people do things because they're pressured. But the thing that was very interesting, and this is, I think, what goes along with this, the law of misprision of treason, is that if you took a person that volunteer and you pulled them to the side and you put another actor in the chair to do the bells and whistles to shock the other person, and Dr. Stanley Milgram would say to the volunteer, I'm going to ask the person in the other room a series of questions. When they get it wrong, you, the volunteer, are to tell this person sitting at the switchboard to shock that person. And then you tell them to turn the voltage up every time when they get another question wrong and shock them again. Now the volunteer is not doing the shocking. They're just telling the other person, you got to up it and you got to do it again. The stark reality of that is that the people, the volunteers, would take this all the way to death. Over 80% of these people would do that, and there was no protests. They would do it. There was no passing out or defecating on themselves or urinating. They would just do it. They would keep telling the person, shock them again, all the way to death. So when we look at senior executive service members that don't do anything, like Barr and Durham, like a lot of these people in the DOJ and the FBI and the CIA, and they sit back and they allow these things to happen, knowing what's happening. First thing you have to do is you have to ask yourself, are they a part of it? Secondly, you have to ask yourself, do they disagree with it, but they're just allowing it to happen? Well, similar to the person who sat there and allowed the experiment to happen and didn't stop it and didn't protest, but they said they thought it was just I wasn't killing, I wasn't flipping the switch. I just allowed them to do it. I just said, okay, you do it. They already knew what they were going to do. That's how people justify this. When you look at this law of misprision of treason, whoever owing allegiance to the United States and having knowledge, see, now it's not the person committing the treason, it's the person having knowledge of the commission of treason against them. And they don't do anything about it. They conceal it, or they don't do anything. As soon as they can to disclose it or make known, well, they're guilty of that. And they can be imprisoned and they can be fined. It's not happening. Let's look at rebellion and insurrection. This is incredible, okay? Whoever incites, sets on foot, assists, or engages in any rebellion or insurrection against the authority of the United States or the laws thereof, or gives aid or comfort thereto, shall be fined under this and imprisoned not more than 10 years or both. They shall be incapable of holding any office under the United States. Again, whoever incites, sets on foot, assists, or engages in any rebellion or insurrection against the authority of the United States or the laws. You are seeing this time and time again. And the thing is, the media would tell you that when people stand up against it, like the guy in Wisconsin, where he ended up killing two of these lefties and injuring one, they will try to convince everyone that that is what that person is doing, that anybody who stands up to these leftists, they're actually taking part in rebellion, when in fact they're not going against the government. They're standing up against people who are trying to overthrow the government. Now let's look at sedition. This is one that a lot of people know about, but they haven't looked at it in connection with these other laws that we're talking about here. And thinking that it's not just to go after people who commit insurrection or commit treason or aid and support treason or rebellion, but these are laws, as Louis Gohmert was telling me, these are laws that we have on the books to stop the movement of communism. Let's look at sedition. Remember, this is sedition conspiracy. Remember, I always talk about conspiracy. Conspiracy is very important because what you do is when you show that two or more people are conspiring to do more than two crimes, right, in furtherance of a specific goal or aim, that's a conspiracy. And you can get a whole group of people now, not just one. That's why the word conspiracy, seditious conspiracy, is very important in this definition. If two or more persons, remember, that's a group, two or more persons in any state or territory or in any place subject to the jurisdiction of the United States conspire to overthrow, put down, or to destroy by force the government of the United States, or to levy war against them, or to oppose by force the authority thereof, or by force to prevent, hinder, or delay the execution of any law of the United States, or by force to seize, take, or possess any property of the United States, contrary to the authority thereof, they shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 20 years or both. Now, here's what's I really want you to, let me read the first part of that again. And I want you to think about what all these rioters are doing, even the ones that are pretending to be caring about black lives, okay, end up being riots. And the reality is and the ones that are talking about defunding the police, that is subversion. They are trying to break down the government's ability to police and to enforce laws and to keep peace and protect the people, the American people. Now listen again as I read just the first part of this and think about the acts that these people are doing, okay? Let me go to the one part where it says, conspires to overthrow. That's clearly happening, not just on the level of the rioters. It's happening with those who are funding it, like George Soros. It's happening where he's paying to get attorney generals in states and prosecutors in states, and that's how they're waging their war. All these different congressmen and senators and judges, and I would even throw in the mix here, media. In fact, let me play this for you. I'm going to finish that definition because I want you to listen to what happened on Fox News, okay? Because as I'm reading this, I want you to think about how the media plays a role in this. Again, I'm talking about senior executive service a lot. I'm talking about the investors and people like George Soros, and I'm talking about these rioters and these activists, quote unquote activists, who are all saying the same thing. They're Marxists. They hate the government. They want the police to go away. All this stuff. They're trying to overthrow the government. Again, remember, this is seditious conspiracy. Conspire to overthrow, put down, or destroy by force the government of the United States, or to levy war against them. What do you think this is? This is war against the United States. And when you say the government of the United States, it's the Constitution. The Constitution is the foundation of government. So when you levy war against the Constitution, you're levying war against the government. They're opposing by force the authority of the government, or by force to prevent, hinder, or delay the execution of any law in the United States. Or by force seize, take, or possess any property of the United States. I consider what's happening in Portland as to be seizing and possessing the federal courts because they can't get into those courts. Now, listen to what happened on Fox News, okay? Listen to this. And you tell me if what's happening, when it comes to George Soros and these financiers, tell me, where in the heck did it go? Here it is. Okay. Listen to this and tell me this doesn't just send chills up your spine. I want Harris Faulkner and Melissa Francis. I don't give two craps about Marie Harf, but Harris Faulkner and Melissa Francis, I want to know what the heck is happening here. Because I'll set this up for you. Newt Gingrich, who's never short of words, is talking about, and he I don't know what the conversation was leading up to this, but he starts talking about George Soros. And listen to Melissa Francis and then Marie Harf. It's Melissa Francis first, then Marie Harf, then Harris Faulkner, and then 5 seconds of silence in TV world is an eternity. I have never seen anything like this before in my lifetime, especially now having been in media. I've never seen anything like this. Listen to what they say.
Whose lives have been destroyed by this violence.
Yeah, it's so true. They represent everybody,
Harris.
right? Speaker Gingrich, I know you have a final thought for us.
Yeah, look, the number one problem in almost all these cities is George Soros elected left-wing, anti-police, pro-criminal district attorneys who refuse to keep people locked up. Just yesterday, they put somebody back on the street who's wanted for 2 different murders in New York City. You cannot solve this problem, and both Harris and Biden have talked very proudly about what they call progressive district attorneys. Progressive district attorneys are anti-police, pro-criminal, and overwhelmingly elected with George Soros's money, and they're a major cause of the violence we're seeing because they keep putting the violent criminals back on the street.
I'm not sure we need to bring George Soros into this.
I was going to say you get the last word, Speaker.
He paid for it. I mean, why can't we discuss the fact that millions of dollars he spent?
I agree with Melissa. George Soros doesn't need to be a part of this conversation.
Now, did you hear what Marie Harf just said? I agree with Melissa. George Soros does not need to be a part of this conversation. That is shocking to me. Now, listen to Harris Faulkner's response, and then listen to what happens.
Okay. So it's verboten.
All right, we're going to. Okay, we're going to move on.
Wow. That is incredible. Actually, Newt Gingrich said, so it's verboten. I'm just I'm shocked at what Melissa Francis, I don't know Melissa Francis. I've been on her show before, but I don't know her. But I'm absolutely shocked that she was the one who said that before Marie Harf. Let me see if I can pick this one part out again.
I agree with Melissa. George Soros doesn't need to be a part of this conversation.
That's
the
Marie
last
Harf.
word, Speaker.
There you go.
Major cause of the violence we're seeing because they keep putting the violent criminals back on the street.
I'm not sure we need to bring George Soros into this.
That's Melissa Francis from Fox News. What is that? What is that all about? That pause, the face on Harris Faulkner is so disturbing, and that pause is so disturbing. I've never seen anything like this before. In fact, disturbing is the way I explained it on Twitter. I said this is the most disturbing exchange I've ever seen on television. As soon as Newt Gingrich mentioned that, it was as if somebody was screaming in the headsets, stop this language, stop it right now, which is probably what happened. Now, let's go back and let's look at, if I can pull this up here, U.S. Code 18-2384, Seditious Conspiracy. I think that media, I think that politicians, big money investors in this movement, activists, rioters, paid participants are all a part of this seditious conspiracy where they conspire. Remember, 2 or more people, that makes up a group of people. And the conspiracy is that when conspiracy kicks in, is that they are conspiring to carry out 2 or more crimes in the furtherance of their aim. It doesn't have to necessarily be political, but their aim. Okay, so 2 or more people, so it's a group, 2 or more crimes, so they show that they're actually working towards something. And in this case, conspiracy to overthrow, put down, or to destroy by force the government of the United States, or to levy war against them, or to oppose by force the authority thereof, or by force to prevent, hinder, or delay the execution of any law of the United States, or by force to seize, take, possess any property of the United States. Does that not sound exactly what's happening over and over and over again? And when you add that to the rebellion or insurrection, the misprision of treason, that's when they allow the treason to happen, they don't report it, and treason itself. I mean, there's others I could go on through here, and they all kind of go on along with this, but these laws are already on the books, and they're not being enforced by Barr, by Durham, by the DOJ. And when I look at the reality of how this stuff is unfolding, what I am seeing is exactly what the senior executive service member who I talked to, who I mentioned about earlier, who was talking about how that senior executive service member who was in charge of enough of the policy where they just sat on it because they either didn't like it, didn't agree with it, or didn't want to implement it, and they waited until the president at that time, I think it was Bush, got out of office, and then it just went away. You see, these people are either actively involved, which I think was clear when it comes to Obama and all these individuals that were a part of the attempt to overthrow the election in 2017 or 2016 and the actual presidency of Donald J. Trump. It's obvious what was happening then, but it's obvious that it's happening now. And what they're doing and what they're intending to do, they are saying what they intend to do. And this is so focused. It's so easy to see. And when I explain it to you, and when we look at treason and rebellion and insurrection, the misprision of treason, I think that's an absolutely fascinating crime. 18 U.S. Code 2382, misprision of treason. That is, I've looked at these things before, but it really is hitting home how these right now, in this day and age, right now, could be used to stop what's happening, and it's not. And that has to give you pause. You have to sit there and think to yourself, what is happening here? And if we cannot, and this is a very important thing, okay? This is the takeaway for this show. If people in the government are involved in treason or misprision of treason or subversion or rebellion, if they are involved with it and the American people do what they should do and what they've been told that they can do by the founding fathers to stand up against that, they're not standing up against the government. They're standing up against people who are committing these crimes and who are trying to instill a different form of government. And this is the dilemma that we're at now. It was different during the Revolutionary War because they were facing a foreign enemy. Now the enemy is within. The enemy is in the government. The enemy is being allowed, it's being in aid and comfort by people in the government. The enemy in the war is being able to progress not at a snail's pace, at lightning pace, by individuals in the government and in governments, state governments and city and local governments. This is the great dilemma. And in order to take action against this, and by action, I mean to either push on your representatives and get them to enforce these laws, or if, for instance, Biden gets elected and they try to turn the military on the people to enforce these martial laws, which even worse than what is happening now with these masks and so on and so forth, it is going to be up to the people to stand up against that. And I'm not talking about standing up against the Constitution. I'm talking about standing up against people who have, because of their nefarious ways, gotten into positions in the government to cause these types of crimes to go unchecked. This is the great dilemma that we're at now. Now, as you sit there on your couch and you're on social media or watching television and you're seeing these riots occur, you're seeing people being elected to Congress and the Senate who are open Marxists and communists, and you're seeing socialism and communism push forward, and you ask yourself, where is government? Where's the DOJ? Why aren't they passing and enforcing laws to stop this attempt to overthrow our Constitution? Folks, those laws are already on the books. It's called treason, misprision of treason, rebellion and insurrection, seditious conspiracy, advocating to overthrow the government. The laws are there. What you should be asking yourself is, why aren't these laws being enforced by the DOJ and the FBI and the government? That's what you should be asking. I'm Jonathan Gilliam. This is The Experts. The truth has arrived. Peace, and we're out of here.